Hey guys, I was hanging around the Tech group on Facebook and someone from Tech mentioned using fermentation belts to keep resin warm in the vat. So I decided to check it out and here are my findings. So for those that don't know, fermentation belts are basically a heating element wrapped in silicone with a plug on it. They're super simple devices. You plug them in and they get warm or hot, depending on your definition of either. They're primarily used to make beer, kombucha, kimchi, anything that needs fermentation at a relatively steady temperature. So you might be wondering why you need to do this. My last video I did on a heated enclosure, I got a lot of people that were like angry or something about like this being overkill, you don't need to do this. There's really two main reasons why you might need to heat your resin in the vat. Reason number one is if you're working in a non-conditioned space, no AC, no heat, and you have relatively wild temperature swings, or it simply gets too cold for your resin to work properly. So all resins have temperature ranges that they're designed to work in. If you set up your resin 3D printer, run some test prints, and get an exposure time, then the temperature drops, that exposure time will be longer. If it gets warmer, then the exposure time potentially gets shorter. If you're in an unconditioned space and you start printing at one temperature, then the temperature drops significantly, the exposure time is gonna change and your print's gonna fail. It's gonna cause all kinds of problems. So the second reason is some resins are specifically designed to work best at higher temperatures. The ones I use are Tech Sculpt and Tech Build, and both work best above 25 degrees Celsius, according to Tech. Those are the resins I primarily use, so I need to heat them up. So you might have seen my other video where I build an enclosure, put a thermostatically controlled outlet on it, and a cheap Amazon heater. And that worked great, and it's still a completely viable build, and it works especially well if you want to enclose some of the fumes that could be produced while 3D printing. But the fermentation belt, I think, is not only good, it's fast, and it's cheap, which is kind of a miracle of engineering. So I strapped one onto my Epax E10, and about an hour later, the resin was up to 25 degrees Celsius. And within about 2 hours, it stabilized right around 30. And this is perfect. Resin needs to be above 25C and 30 as well within a normal range. I don't even know if it has an upper bound. I'm sure at some point it all falls apart. So the belt fits perfectly on the Epax E10. On my smaller Creality LD2, I had to basically put like one of those dog ear clips on it to kind of clip it close. You could use maybe like a Velcro strap around there, maybe a big rubber band or something. To hold it close to the vat. And I think if you have a printer with a metal vat like the Saturn or the Mars or something like that, it's gonna actually heat up a little bit quicker because the Epax has plastic and it doesn't, it's not as heat conductive as those other ones are. Now there's one area where this doesn't perform as well as my heated enclosure. And that is if you need to add resin in the middle of a print, which I often have to do when I'm printing these large molds. So for that, you need another fermentation belt. Fermentation belt. And for that, you need another fermentation belt. Or in this case, I got a kombucha heater. You can also get these really big pad heaters if you want to do multiple. It works really well. You can put multiple resin containers inside of there and keep them heated. And it still comes out way cheaper than the enclosure and the thermostatically controlled outlet and the space heater does. That whole rig was about 150 bucks. For both of these, you can even get like two fermentation. For the fermentation belt build costs maybe 40 bucks to get two of them if you find them cheap enough. The price seems to fluctuate relatively wildly. You get a pad if you want to do multiple outside. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but generally you're looking at under $60 for this setup. And it works great. Links to the different fermentation belts I've used are in the description below. If you use that, I get a little bit of money, probably like a quarter of a penny or something. But hey, I appreciate it. I love you guys. If you're using Sculpt, if you're using Build, if you're using any engineering resin that needs to be warm, this is a great way to do it. It absolutely works flawlessly. Good luck with it, guys. Take care, tight lines.